Hey, it's me again. It is currently January 4th. Happy New Year's. Merry Christmas. This journal is going to be from December 21st to today. So let's get right into it. So, what happens? Well, Venezuela got bombed, right? By what the administration calls Operation Absolute Resolve. So, is it an invasion? Is it an aggression? Well, I guess we just have to wait and see whether or not it fits any of these criteria. So, as far as we know right now, Maduro and his wife are out, but his allies currently run the government. So far, we haven't seen any widespread US troops in any cities or territory, though the administration has said that the US is expected to run Venezuela until a safe, proper, judicious transition. We don't know what that is. Maybe like a democratic election, not sure. US companies are expected to build or rebuild the oil sector. That's interesting to note. So the United Nations Framework for Aggression defines aggression as the use of armed forces crossing and attacking or occupying, however temporary, resulting from an attack, right? As far as the criminality of things go, that is determined by Rome's crime of aggression, which refers to the leaders who plan on executing such acts, right? So for this to be considered a crime or a crime of aggression, the nature of the act needs to be examined. So was the attack unprovoked? With the gravity of or severity of the forces used, and scale, right? Which is the size and reach of the operation. As far as we know, as far as right now, Caracas seems to be the only place that has been attacked, to capture Maduro. We know that 40 to 80 civilians and security personnel have been killed. There have been no U.S. casualty, according to the U.S. press conference. And the 40 to 80 civilians was according to official Venezuelan media. So take that as you will. So is it an invasion? Is it an aggression? Invasion, I can see, you can make an argument for it. As far as a large-scale ground occupation, maybe not, since it is, as of now, localized to Caracas. Is it a forceful entry of a nation? Yes. Has land been occupied? Yes, according to, the administration. And it looks like they're not going anywhere anytime soon. To topple a government? No, that hasn't happened. To gain concessions, oil, yes. To liberate a population, there have been arguments to overthrow, I guess, an illegitimate government. So I guess you can kind of make an argument for that. So yeah, take it as you will. Be that an invasion or aggression. So I want to point your attention to the unprovoked attack, as this explains why Venezuela has been attacked. Well, according to the administration, the major driver of this happening is because of narco-terrorism and drug trafficking. The main reason that is cited is because the United States wanted to halt the flow of narcotics. It is important to know that Venezuela is not the major producers of much of the narcotics cited, right? For example, cocaine is produced mostly in Colombia, which accounts for about 80%. Fentanyl and meth, that goes to Mexico, which is 96%. However, Venezuela do serve as a secondary transport hub, transporting about 8 to 10% of most cocaine. However, there has been negligible role cited in their production and transport of fentanyl and meth. Venezuela has also been implicated in the administration's majors list, right? And their government complicity in failing to prevent the proliferation or transport of these drugs, right? And the complicity of the government, being in a narco government in enabling this to happen. Of course, we can't really talk about the reasons why this invasion occurred without talking about oil, right? So there is strong evidence of oil, by the administration's own words, of oil seizure and revitalization. There's also geopolitical reasons why this is happening. A reason cited was to end Venezuela's cooperation with U.S. rival China, Russia, Iran, and Cuba. There is also implication of regime change, right? Remember that the administration has been cited to try to run Venezuela into a safe, proper, judicious transition. But the reason cited for regime change was to return stability after an illegitimate leader. So now we'll move on to implications, talk about the future, economics, and relations. Maduro is expected to appear before the court, the New York court, tomorrow. So we should stay tuned for that. There's also risk of escalation in that it emboldens Russia and China with them using the same rationale. But I guess I could argue that I don't think it really makes sense for Russia, since Russia has already invaded Ukraine on the albeit justified, quote unquote justified, fear of NATO expansion into its territory, though that is still a weak reason compared to, I guess, what the United States has against Venezuela. But I feel by far that China's reason is still the weakest in that it can't really invade Taiwan on the grounds of Taiwan has been part of China since ancient time. It's not really that strong a reason either. So I don't really buy the emboldened part, but we still have to wait and see. You're looking at the United Nations, it may be deemed illegal. So under the UN Charter, Article 2, it bars members from using military force and to respect sovereignty of a sovereign nation, unless there is a consultation with the UN or acting in self-defense. It is considered, I guess, illegal in the sense that the United States hasn't consulted the UN before invading, and there isn't really a case for self-defense. It's more so an arrest, right? Law enforcement. So there is also an emergency hearing expected to occur tomorrow. So tomorrow, Monday the 5th, stay tuned for that. And some possible retaliations could be sanctions and embargoes against the US, but the US does have veto power, so that's likely not going to go through. But some countries may choose whether or not to respect their veto and go ahead with the sanctions anyway. So that could be some retaliation the US might face. As far as implications, economic implications, most important to me, in the short term, we are likely to see little to no change in oil prices because of the oversupply in oil. Russia has been able to crank up oil production and sales since the war to fund its war. So oil prices are likely not going to drop anytime soon because it's oversaturated right now with Russian oil, cheap Russian oil. Though oil to neighboring countries like Trinidad, Colombia, or Tobago may feel the disruptions in oil supply, right? So I guess a diesel in the United States, in the short term, we might expect to see the prices of food and transportation costs go up because Venezuela is also a source of diesel. US farms and construction use diesel for their machinery, so destabilization there. However, in the long term, we should expect to see a booming oil industry and a booming energy industry, right? So Venezuela actually holds the largest oil reserve in the world, around 300 billion barrels. ExxonMobil, Chevron, and ConocoPhillips have pledged billions of dollars to rebuild infrastructure. And it looks like the United States is also planning to begin refining using, efficient refining methods. So it looks like there is a lot of money to be had in this industry. There's also a geopolitical play, which, especially as it relates to oil dependence on Russia and Iran, in that now that the US has more oil, potentially more cheap oil, allies are likely to buy from the US as opposed to Russia. Of course, there is also a downside to this. There could be years of instability with the occupation. If the occupation drags, it might become more expensive. Thinking back to Afghanistan and Iraq. But all this talk about the booming oil economy, geopolitical play, all hinges on what the UN rules, or if there are any other sanctions or retaliations, but from other countries, or what Congress also rules, right? So we just have to wait and see. Well, I can say it's really interesting right now. So as far as updates go in my personal life, well, I finally started working as an EMT. I completed my training last week. I'm about to start my first day trip working tomorrow at 4. So wish me good luck. Yeah, so far everything seems normal to me. Well, yeah, we are in interesting times. We just have to wait and see what happens with Venezuela, what the Supreme Court rules in terms of tariffs, what the fiscal policy of the Fed would be in 2026, and how the economy generally will do in 2026. But yeah, interesting times. I'm excited, actually. But yeah, thanks for watching. Till next time, work good, play good, rest good. Bye.